Hi, everyone. I'm Kelly O'Horo, and this is Adaptable Behavior Explained. Hi there. Thanks for joining us today on Adaptable. I'm Kelly O'Horo, and I'm happy to share with you this really hard topic today that we're going to talk about, which is infidelity. I've had several requests in the comment sections on previous relationship episodes to do a show on this, so hopefully this can help you out. Infidelity is a really tough topic, but it's pretty common. And so today we're going to discuss why people can be unfaithful, the steps that are needed to reconcile if that's the decision, and the experiences both people might be going through upon discovery or disclosure. We're going to talk about statistics and potential outcomes for marriages that face this challenge. And so let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing we're going to talk about are reasons that people are unfaithful, and there's many. Infidelity is really painful and it's complex, and understanding the reasons behind it can be, maybe the first step toward healing, whether you decide to stay with a person or not. Here are some common reasons why people might be unfaithful, and this can be helpful for someone who has been unfaithful as well as for the person who experienced the betrayal. So the first that might be hard to hear is a lack of love. Sometimes people feel a lack of emotional connection or love or intimacy in their primary relationship. They've lost connection. Their lives have gotten so busy. The stressors that are outside of the marriage become insurmountable, and they don't feel that they're in connection with their partner, and they don't feel like they're moving through life and the hard things in life with their partner. So let me give you an example of a client. Let's call her Sarah. She feels emotionally neglected by her husband, who is really often preoccupied with work. She felt like she was an item on his checklist. And so she begins seeking some emotional fulfillment through an affair with a coworker who gave her the attention that she was so longing for and craved. And so when you think about this, it starts out with a deficit in her own experience in her marriage. Now, I'm not saying that this is an excuse. Of course, we need to know we're having that issue, and we need to address it with our partner, with a therapist, because otherwise we create potential damage in our marriage or in our relationship by finding that connection and attention outward. Another reason that some people have an affair is because of their desire for variety. Oftentimes, boredom or desire for a new experience can lead to infidelity. So again, these are not good excuses. These are just potential reasons that start someone on this path. So let me talk about another client. Let's call him John. He admits that he cheated because he felt his marriage had become monotonous, boring. There was never anything new. And the excitement of the new relationship made him feel alive again. Well, this doesn't have to be the solution, because if you're noticing this feeling of monotony or boredom, we want to encourage you to go to your partner and say, we need to find some ways to spice this up. And there's so many tools and tricks and books and, things that you can find to create more spice and intention to liven up the experience of intimacy in your marriage. Another reason that people might have an affair are perhaps low commitment. Maybe they're just someone who don't necessarily see the commitment in being with someone. And so that lack of commitment in the relationship or to the relationship can make infidelity more likely. So let's say, for example, we'll call her Lisa. She enters into her marriage with doubts, and she never fully knows that or admits that to herself or certainly to her partner. So she's not really fully committed at the beginning of the experience. So then an opportunity for an affair arises. She doesn't feel that same level of betrayal that someone who is more committed to their partner might feel. And again, this isn't a justification. The damage is going to be just as painful because that's not necessarily the assumption of the partner that's being betrayed. Another reason might be situational factors. Sometimes people have experiences like being away from their partner for long periods of time or under the influence of a substance like alcohol can lead to a lapse in judgment or prefrontal lobe, thinking, irrational decision making, and there can be that lapse of judgment that can lead to infidelity. So, for example, if someone works frequently out of town, finds themselves in situations where they're lonely, they're disconnected from their family. So during a trip, maybe they have a one-night stand after they had a heavy night of drinking. This can be potentially easier to move through because it wasn't as premeditated, and it can be perhaps easier for someone to get to forgiveness and understanding if this was the reason. So these reasons can be helpful to understand. Oftentimes what I have seen in my practice, and partly because people will come in wanting to stay together and reconcile, and they're really looking for the underlying reason that caused them to behave in this way in the first place, because they don't want to be a hurtful person. Oftentimes at the root of that is self-esteem issues. So someone with low self-esteem might seek that validation through infidelity. They don't know how to ask for what they need. They don't know that they deserve connection. And so they tend to, if something falls into their lap in a more easy way, they feel better about themselves from the attention. For example, a client struggles with self-worth and found that attention from someone outside of their marriage made them feel more desirable and valued. And because of the gap in their own sense of self-worth and self-esteem, that was too hard to avoid or to not lean into. Again, working on those self-esteem issues and ultimately their trauma issues and their attachment issues from before the relationship are going to be necessary to overcome propensity to do something like that again. We can't expect behavior to change if we don't look at why the behavior happened. Attachment injuries from previous trauma, for me, almost always predicate why someone would step out of their marriage, because they don't have the same sense of values. They don't believe they're worth behaving in certain ways. And that's almost always from previous attachment injuries. These past trauma injuries and attachment, they significantly impact behavior in relationships. And that can look like so much external validation or really withdrawing and holding self small. And so those things, especially when experiencing historical abandonment or neglect. So talk about a client who experienced childhood abandonment. They had a difficult time trusting their partner. His unresolved trauma led him to seek comfort and validation outside of his marriage. And so understanding some of these reasons can help both partners address their underlying issues in their relationship and ultimately potentially help get to forgiveness and understanding and building back of trust. So let's say that you do find out your partner is having an affair or they disclose this and you decide you want to reconcile. So we want to talk about the steps that are likely going to happen after infidelity. And reconciliation after infidelity is challenging, but it is possible if there's commitment and effort from both partners. We can't have one partner have to do all the heavy lifting. It won't work. So some essential steps that are part of the reconciliation. And I have to say, a little disclosure here, I have had couples that have massively better relationships after reconciling after infidelity because of all the hard work they were willing to do to get past that. And more often than not, they see there were a lot of injuries in the relationship even before the infidelity took place. And so it's oftentimes really helpful to do the work and get through it if that's the desire. But again, you're going to need to know that there's a lot of steps that take place and it's not an easy road. So open communication is first and foremost. Learning how to be transparent, honest, and in order to rebuild that trust is absolutely critical or crucial. And if that doesn't become part of how we learn to engage with one another, there's not a chance that trust can be rebuilt. So one couple I worked with, let's call them Jessica and Tom, they found that regular, honest conversations about their feelings help them to rebuild trust. So they scheduled weekly check-ins to discuss their progress, and then they were able to have a platform to discuss any lingering concerns that they hadn't addressed throughout their busy work weeks. And that gave them more understanding about the foundation of their connection. So again, communication is key, and that's really the lapse of all infidelity. There was a gap in communication about what was going on in the person that partook in their indiscretion. Accountability is everything. The partner who cheated has to take full responsibility for their actions without excuses. Understanding the why is fine, but it can't be part of their accountability. So after an affair, taking full responsibility ending the contact with the other person, agreeing to be transparent about whereabouts, maybe even allowing partners to track locations, is all part of rebuilding trust with a partner. And so we need to understand that this is a normal part about rebuilding trust. There's really not going to be comfort in the partner that was betrayed without a lot of this. Forgiveness is key. And when I was early in my counseling days, I saw this picture that I thought was such a good visual representation of forgiveness, because it's an action that requires a lot of understanding that, when we're on, let's use an example for like a fish hook. If I'm on the hook with unforgiveness, I am behind the person that hurt me on this hook. And so I first have to let them off the hook before I'm going to be able to get off myself of the pain and get out of the stuckness. And so it's an action that requires intention. It requires a lot of work. And it's a critical part of the healing process. So let me give you an example. A client named Laura struggles to forgive her husband, but through therapy, through allowing herself to process her emotions, she gradually works towards forgiveness for her partner, and ultimately for herself, and some of the parts that she was dealing with related to, how didn't I know it was going on? Where did I fall short? Why wasn't I good enough? And all of that noise that was in her own head helped her get to a place of forgiveness for herself in the parts that she was really beating herself up for. And that is really essential for reconciliation as one of the steps to building back a relationship and potential connection. This is not a fast experience. So the next tip is that patience is required. It takes time. Both partners have to be patient. It can take years to rebuild trust. And if you're both willing to do the work, I assure you it can happen. So let me give you an example. Let's call them Maria and Alex. They understand that healing doesn't happen overnight. They commit to being patient with each other, acknowledge that there's setbacks as part of the process, and realize that they're both willing to dig in and continue whatever that takes, both individual therapy, couples therapy, and a lot of accountability and transparency as part of that rebuild. And I'm not sure it's very easy to get through this without professional help. You've got to have a third objective party to help you get through this. It's so painful an experience. So seeking therapy can provide guidance and support. And so I would say, because affairs tend to be so traumatic, we want to make sure we're dealing with a therapist who's trained in trauma therapy. I specifically endorse EMDR therapy, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. It will help address the body, the trauma that gets stuck. It helps to reprocess traumatic memories, images, imaginal images that are usually part of the emotional distress that comes from having been involved in a relationship where there was affair. So I can tell you that I've had a couple on my caseload where there's trauma injuries from both the infidelity, like the loss of time spent with the partner in connection, the understanding of what we thought the relationship looked like, the trauma over all the times that a person said something and then they weren't being honest. And so the betrayals over and over, all the little betrayals of the lies that took place in order to allow the infidelity to happen. For the person who was betrayed, a lot of self-image issues related to good enough and body image and, comparing of the person that the affair happens with. So all of those pieces are really traumatic. And so having individual trauma therapy for both parties is essential, because that behavior, like I said, is oftentimes rooted in an unresolved trauma experience or attachment deficit or fracture from childhood. And so that's where the inability to talk about or speak up or get their needs met or respectfully end a relationship that is that is not meeting the needs, and work has been done, and people can't overcome that. So all of those things are going to be the better way to address it. And we learn more of this in our work. Couples therapy, specifically EFT or emotion focused couples therapy, I highly, highly recommend. That can help focus on rebuilding trust, helping to gain earned secure attachment back in the relationship after the infidelity is experienced. And all of those things are really oftentimes needed in order to rebuild and gain a connection or a sense of trust back in the relationship. So next, we're going to talk about experiences that happen for people upon the disclosure or the discovery. So finding out about infidelity can trigger a wide range of emotions and reactions. And so I want to talk a little bit about what both people might experience because it's a painful and it's a volatile time oftentimes. So many times there's an emotional roller coaster. So the betrayed partner might experience intense emotions like anger, sadness, confusion, and they might totally shut down, avoid, denial, be in shock. All of these things might be part of what happens after finding out a betrayal has happened. So let me give you an example. Let's call her Anna. She discovers her husband's affair. She feels this whirlwind of emotions from intense anger to deep sadness and indecision, often within the same day. And so that experience leads her to really feel a sense of confusion about what she even wants to do. Another thing that might happen is the detective work. And so the betrayed person might start feeling the need to verify the truth by checking phones, locations, emails, and other records. Again, how extensive was the betrayal? And trying to ultimately gain a sense of control, which often is an illusion, because the feelings of finding this out are so powerless. So after finding out about a lie or a betrayal like this, the compulsion to check things regularly, to try to self-soothe or seek reassurance and transparency can be part of a behavior that follows discovering about an infidelity. So it's very normal. Another feeling or a set of feelings that often happen following discovering infidelity are shame and regret. The unfaithful partner often feels intense shame, intense regret. If they do love their partner, but they've had this indiscretion, there's a lot of confusion oftentimes about why they behaved in the way they did. They can be overwhelmed with that shame and regret. They can become really defensive because of that, because the guilt of hurting their partner is so profound. If there's children involved, now the children potentially find out, there's that sense of major change in the relationship and what this person may have meant to their children and how that can change. And so it's really overwhelming as well for a partner that loves their partner while having been involved with a betrayal or of infidelity. There's also something that happens after. So there's this kind of infidelity stress disorder. It's not an actual disorder, but it's basically part of an acute stress reaction that is really similar to PTSD, where there's a lot of anxiety, depression, because now their relationship that they thought they had, the truth about where it really stands is now part of it. And so, for example, in one couple, both Lisa and her husband experience anxiety, depression following the revelation of her affair, requires professional support to manage these symptoms. And ultimately, we go back through all of the things that have to take place in the rebuild if they decide to stay together. So it's not an easy fight, but it can be really rewarding and beautiful if both parties are willing to go through the steps in order to gain, rebuild trust and connection. So now let's talk about statistics and potential outcomes, because a lot of people want to know that. They say, what are the likelihood that my husband and I are going to make it after finding this out? So the survival rate, studies show that between 60 and 75% of couples stay together after an affair is discovered. So many couples like Sarah and John chose to work through their issues and rebuild their relationship. They find new ways to connect and to strengthen their bond, and ultimately the repair of overcoming this fracture in their marriage builds their relationship to be even stronger. So divorce rates among infidelity, approximately 20 to 40% of divorces cite infidelity as a primary reason. So for couples like Emily and Mark, the betrayal was too significant to overcome, leading to a decision to part ways. I've also seen, and this is really sad, where the person who was betrayed, they are unwilling to go do the work. And so even when the betraying partner is willing to do the work, to look at the why and to try to overcome and to change their behavior, the person who was cheated on, they are not willing to go do the work to get past it because they weren't the one that created the problem in the first place. And so there can be a stubbornness or a willfulness that prevents them, and also a desire to just protect themselves and not go through that pain of the healing process. And so we have to have both people willing to do the work in order to overcome the pain from infidelity. Long-term outcomes. Couples who work through infidelity can emerge stronger with a deeper understanding and commitment. And I have seen this several times on my caseload for people who are willing to commit and work through things. And their relationships are far better after the months or even years of therapy and hard work. They found their relationships were even stronger and more resilient than before the affair, which makes a lot of sense. The affair likely wouldn't have happened if the relationship was in good tact. So while infidelity is a significant challenge, it doesn't have to mean the end of a relationship. It's an uphill battle. It is painful, but with effort and understanding, the right supports, and the willingness to work hard, couples can rebuild trust and create a stronger bond. So thank you so much for joining us on today's episode on infidelity. It is a difficult topic, I know, but understanding the reasons behind it, the steps to reconcile, and potential outcomes hopefully can provide you some hope and help move you in the direction that you need to go for your own life. And if you or someone you know is struggling with infidelity, remember that professional help is available and likely really necessary. So thank you so much for tuning in. Until next time, take care. Keep working towards healing and understanding in your relationships. And don't forget to lead with love, because it'll never steer you wrong. And that includes for self, not just other.